Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, recognition of visitor input. I did not receive any emails unless someone had received anything. So that's no administrative or no, roll call. Sorry about that. Roll call. Director Yuhan.
Here.
Stacy, not absent. Matt.
Here.
Tom.
Here.
Tim is absent. Brandy.
Here.
Nicole.
Here.
Bill Addy's here and Polly is absent.
Director. Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, we'll move on to administrative items. Item 3, consider approval of the consultant agreement between Costin Group Minnesota and Rockridge Schools. I'll let the record reflect that Stacy Schultz has showed up at 5:04.
My apologies for being late.
Accept.
And thank you, Director Addy, members of the board. Let me introduce this one. It is related to the next agenda topic that you're going to have on the difficult questions. What do we do with the North Star Elementary? Do we move forward or do we pause for a year? This is related. As everyone knows, because of the dramatic COVID inflationary increase, construction costs have just jumped in the last 12 months. And the Kraus-Anderson crew will talk about that just a little bit. But I want the board to know we are looking at other solutions for the $6.7 million. So this is why this agenda is first on your packet for tonight. We have been talking to numerous people about what are other maybe potential sources of revenue to make up for the dramatic construction costs. So we believe that a viable avenue to go down is to go through the political process and to work with some other school districts, most significantly a district named Mabel Canton in the southern part of the state of Minnesota. It's by the Iowa border. They had a situation where almost exactly the same thing happened. In fact, the exact same happened. They passed a bond. They completed phase 1 of the project, and then they went to work on phase 2 of the project, but the bids were just astronomical. And so they were not able to finish what they had told the voters they'd be able to do and what the voters thought they would be getting. So they are a key school district who we have been talking with. And so what we believe there is a possibility, there is a path forward. However, in order to do this, we have to enlist the aid of some other individuals who do this for a living. That's what I believe we're going to have to do, and that would be my recommendation. So the proposal you have before you, it's your call as far as what to do. We would like to pursue this political legislative avenue because we believe we have a compelling case as good as anyone in the entire state of Minnesota as far as COVID directly impacted a project that we had passed before COVID really happened. And so in order to do that, we need help. We need people who can talk to politicians. We need people who know how to draft legislation. We need people who know how to massage this through the process. So you have a proposal in front of you to hire a lobbyist, a company, for the price in the contract. This would be for 12 months. It is not unusual for schools to hire lobbyists. Cities hire lobbyists. It's not unusual at all. We just haven't done it before in Rock Ridge. And so the proposal in front of you is to engage with a lobbyist who will work on your behalf. And let me state this, the only money they would make is what is in the contract. They do not get a percent of, if we're successful, they do not get a percent of whatever the final figure is. This, I believe, is your best path forward as far as trying to find another source to make up for that 6.7 shortfall. So I wanted to let the board know about this before you started talking about the next topic coming up, about what to do about North Star Elementary. How likely is it? 50-50. It might work, it might not. That's how things go through the political process. But I believe, and in talking to other people, you have as good a case of anyone in the state of Minnesota on direct impact that COVID has had to construction costs. So I'll leave it to the board to discuss this, but that's what the proposal is before the board. Before I sit down, any questions?
I have a question. Would this consultant group just be for our school, or would we piggyback with Ely and the Southern School together?
We would be hiring them, and they are, yes, working on behalf of the other two entities also. But we need, and that would be a separate agreement that those other districts would have to have. But the topic is, do you, as a school district, wish to engage them? And time is short because the legislation is moving through quickly. It's going through the committees. So I wish I could say you have a month to think about this. You don't, because of the timing. So you just have to tell me you do want to pursue this avenue or you don't want to pursue this avenue.
Okay, so with that being said, 3.1, can I get a motion to approve the consultant agreement between Costin Group?
So moved.
By Stacy. Support by
Me.
any discussion?
I get the avenue. This is, we're going down, and I can see where the benefit. Have we talked to our elected officials as well? I mean, because they're supposed to work for us, work for us too.
Yes.
And I will note, I was at a RAMS, the Range Association of Municipalities and Schools. We had some of our board members go down and have a meet up with some of our legislators from our district and talked about this. And I think they're open to it, but I echo what Noel has said, that I think it's really in our best interest to spend a little money to gain a little money. And I don't know that will be, I think that having someone advocating on our behalf with the legislators will give us a little extra insurance that we can get some funding.
I agree. I just was making sure that we called ourselves. We can definitely talk to him, like Liz Lagarde and stuff, making sure we can talk to him ourselves too.
I do know Representative Liz Lagarde is working hard with the idea to be part of the solution for us. But I do think it's almost, you almost need to have someone who's down there with their finger on the pulse, in the committee meetings, kind of working on our behalf, and I wholeheartedly support this.
We have used this firm before.
Yeah,
Virginia has, when we did the Parkview.
Yeah. And I couldn't remember, did we also use them when we were looking at collaborating initially with Evelyn Gilbert?
A long time ago, yes, way back 2014, 13, 15 or so.
And as I recall, I think we were pretty pleased with the results that we got from using them.
Any more discussion on 3.1? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. 3.2, consider approval of bids, contract award recommendations for North Star Elementary.
I'll turn. Thanks. Hello again.
How are we doing?
Yes,
Ready tonight? Good. Thanks for seeing us again. We'll get this thing up and running. Lots of discussions over the last 2 weeks, I think.
I suppose you guys found an extra $6 million laying around anywhere, did you?
Not quite.
You take the buildings down there, if we get the money from the state or someone else to build the building, we'd be in good shape.
Agenda item. All right, so I'm sure you've looked at this already, but essentially what we're going to do is kind of refresh your memory on the couple of courses of action and then the little twist that we put on number 6 and see what you guys think. All right, so 2, 5, and 6, any new information of additional funds anything that's come up there, and then we will ask for approval of the bids as they stand today, and also the course of action selection. So if you remember, course of action 5 was no abatement or demo of the Virginia High School at all, which does put you under budget by $1 million, roughly, approximately. Course of action 6 was a partial demo, so we would demo the Roosevelt and Malone and Annex, which would put you slightly under budget. So if you remember those numbers, the current over budget, the soft costs reallocation,
I'm sorry.
allowance, the $1 million of value engineering, some sale funds and additional potential sale funds from selling properties, reallocation of demo funds, demoing some stuff over in Gilbert to help with the sale, and then some ESSER funds that may become available for HVAC. And then here is the no abatement and demo savings for the Virginia High School, also some approximate savings for not doing any of the site work under that building. That gets you the total. A little visual on that for course of action 5. So the North Star School here, existing gym here, and then Malone, Annex, and high school building would stay standard. So there would be some redesign required down at the south end here. No loading dock access, we'd have to figure something out there. And also do some revamping of the site over here for playground spaces, green spaces, that kind of thing. So option 6 was the partial demo. All those are the same, except we would demo the Malone and Annex to give you a little bit more buffer from that south end of the building down to the high school. Would allow the fire access road to stay in here for the fire department. It also creates more space for new playground and basketball court or whatever we end up coming up with there. And stuff could shift around the site. You know, that's not locked in. That's just kind of where we have placed it to show that you got the space to do that. And also the loading dock would not have to change at all either. You would still get the loading dock. So what buildings would remain with this option? The original Virginia High School building, the Evelyn Gilbert High School, the Franklin Elementary in Evelyn, and then the Gilbert campus, Nell Sheen, and the junior high building. The old science wing would come down in this scenario. So with that said, we would stay on schedule, 2022 demolition of Roosevelt, and then 23 demolition of Malone and the Annex, and finish up our site work. And then that would just be a future demo as funds become available. So right to approval. To refresh your memory, the reason why we had this special board meeting on the 7th here to push it along is for the mechanical, electrical items that we need to get approved and on order so that we can get it installed in time to be heating the existing gym by this October. So time crunch there, hence why the special meeting. So thanks for doing that.
Kate, when we talk, I mean, I know you're not finished with the presentation, but when we get into the demo, and we are 1 year ahead of schedule on everything, okay, on everything. So when the demo, when it comes to the demo, you guys still gonna be around to help with the demo process to make sure it's done to specs? Because, you know, I mean, like I said, we are ahead of schedule for 1 year.
So
I mean, you know, I'm trying to say that, you know, I mean, once the North Star is done and, you know, we just, you know, I mean, when it comes to demo of these buildings, we don't have to want to hire somebody that's going to come in and say Cross Anderson didn't abate it properly, like we just did on some of these other buildings, you know, I mean, I want to see you guys involved until the buildings are either sold or gone.
So there's some time from, you know, starting today until we're done with North Star. Because we'd be finishing up North Star, it'd be the like January of '24, sometime in that time frame. So we do have a couple years
Good.
to have that time, so.
Right.
And then in option 6, the manual training building would be coming down under that scenario? I don't see it on the remaining, buildings remaining.
Yes, that would be coming down in this scenario, the manual arts.
Okay.
Yep.
It's right there on,
Right in the middle.
right in the middle.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's the reallocation of funds after junior high, which is.
Okay, all right. I missed it there.
Good question.
All right.
And then one other thing that's happened, because we've had this 2 weeks to, close to 2 weeks to go over this, is we met with a design team and we went over that value engineering line. So back to the dollars.
Sorry.
That $1 million that we put on here, we went through in detail and came up with value engineering type items. And then we also did a user group with some of the teachers, talked about what those are, and some things came out of that. That's what you see at the bottom here. Maybe you can talk those a little bit.
Yeah, so this is that twist that I would mention earlier. So the short casework was a deduct alternate during bidding, and then also the chiller was a deduct alternate. So after the meeting with the user group and looking at a value engineering log with the design team, we are getting the sense that these two items are very important. So the short casework for storage for the teachers in the classrooms, and then the chiller with cooling of the building to make it more comfortable for the kids and teachers to teach in. So.
No, Pete, hang on a second. When it comes to like that, you got the demo funds after, that was junior high school, the manual arts and the Virginia campus. I mean, is that, you're talking the Roosevelt building, correct?
Yeah, so I show the high school savings here.
Right, but where it says manual arts and it says and Virginia campus, you're just basically referring to the Roosevelt.
I know it gets a little confusing.
Yeah.
No, so the Virginia campus in that line
Yeah.
means everything down. But then, right here is.
Oh, okay.
Put back the high school.
Okay, all right,
And get this made, yeah, I know, that's, yeah.
right.
Just wanted to keep showing the math, you know.
Okay, thank you.
And Pete, sorry for the interruption, but
Good.
when Pete was talking about what the teachers said, because we met with I talked a lot to the advisory team. These are folks who have been 2 years. They've been talking about designing this building. They want you to know this, and they talked about this. They had a serious conversation. They said, yes, there's two things that are important, because they wanted a comparable building to Laurentian. They thought that was fair. They didn't say it had to be exactly the same, but equivalent. And so they did say they do feel that they need a chiller system, which is what Laurentian has. That's not a total air conditioning system, but it's a dehumidification. It takes the moisture out of the air. They said that was important. They also said storage. And so when you're in the Laurentian Elementary, there's some storage along the walls of the classroom. When you're looking out, it's about this high. They said that was important, having storage in the classrooms. They wanted me to tell you that, but they also, most important, wanted the board to know. And they talked about this. They said, as long as they got the building that they designed and they thought they were going to get, they understood the demolition, the price increase, they got that. They were okay because originally that whole south of the building was going to be redeveloped into grass trails, some open areas. They understood and they said, as long as you can build North Star Elementary the way we designed it, we understand and we're okay that Virginia High School might need to stand for a period of time. They were okay with that. They understood that. They did say that Malone Hall and the annex would probably have to come down because they needed play space. But they wanted me to tell you that they're okay with Virginia High School standing for a little bit as long as they get the building they thought they were going to get and design, and they just wanted me to let you know that. So I just want to let you know that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Noel.
So if we do this plan and we demo Malone Hall in the annex, what's going to be on that north wall of the high school? Is it going to be open to pigeons and seagulls and everything else?
Oh, no, that would get filled in, boarded up, like a permanent wall.
And is that included in this proposal? Or is that gonna be an extra line item, say, well, the demo was there, but then we gotta secure the building, is that an additional
You'll be putting
bill?
fences around it, I'm sure, and
That would be a part of that approximate budget. So we didn't go out for an estimate and actually solidify that number until we knew what direction you guys wanted to go. But that's taking about $9.50 a square foot of the square footage that's there.
But the way we would leave the building is we would have a metal stud wall to infill, because if you remember, you walk into Malone Hall, and that's kind of an open area right there.
Yep.
We would stud that in, we'd put glass board on that, and we would, on the first level windows where somebody could get into the building, we'd have to go and plywood those up.
Okay.
And I think what you're getting at is, we have some temporary barricade money and that type of thing in the GCs, and we would deal with those windows with that. And we would, we have to just get a handle on how much area we'd have to stud in on that side, but we can't leave it open. The building will be inaccessible, and again, the intent is that it will not be occupiable, that it will be, basically, it's going to be condemned for a later demolition.
So this might be a silly question, but would we still have to maintain heat and anything else in that building, or would that?
Shut it all down.
Okay.
because that building eventually will be demoed.
But you're right, I think what you're getting at is when you do that, things in the structure will deteriorate, right? And that is the intent, that we wouldn't try to maintain that building, that it would be boarded up on the first level, and that it would be condemned for a later demolition.
Bill? This is a discussion period.
We haven't approved anything yet, but we can get there, so.
Well, we had discussion before we,
I know.
before.
He finishes presentation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Just got the last slide is basically, we would ask for a
I'm sorry.
course of action selection, either the, one of the two courses of action, and then with any of these combinations of these alternates here as well, the short case work and the chiller.
Given
So-
the input from that user group.
Yeah.
And just, obviously you can do the math, but the short case work would still fit within the budget. The chiller would basically be beyond the budget.
Like that, so the short case work would basically fit within this, and we end up right at like basically zero, and then the chiller would be above and beyond. So that was the revised.
Okay.
So again, either course of action for a selection with any combination of the alternates that you see here.
yeah, I mean, I think we should have we can have a motion to take action on a course, but we should discuss what course of action the board wants to take.
Well, I was just going to make a motion that we go with number 6 with the additional add alternates.
Okay, so we got motion by Stacy
I'll second.
and second by Nicole. Any discussion? What?
Yeah, and I agree 100% with Dr. Schmidt that it's incumbent on us to deliver a product for the North Star that's every bit as good as the Laurentian. But I personally, I think the best way that we get there is to take a step back to try and raise the other money, because I mean, we've made those promises, we have to live up to them. At the same time, we've promised to take care of our existing facilities, that we don't leave any messes there. And we go ahead and approve this, and now what we have is a hole as far as completing the demolition.
I agree.
And I'm just not comfortable with that. And, you know, and we just were in the budget meeting, John and I were earlier this morning, and we heard again that we're estimating, in addition to the news that we saw at our last meeting, that we're going to lose 50 to 100 students simply by moving, because they won't move, the parents won't move their kids from Virginia to the Franklin for 2 years. That's $500,000 to $1 million a year that we haven't even talked about. And, you know, I wish, we all wish, that the academy would be opening next fall, as was the original schedule. And I think that would give us more options as far as getting the existing Virginia elementary site ready and potentially shifting things over to the high school in Virginia, but obviously that's being used next year. If we waited a year, we would have that option. I don't know what's going to happen to prices in a year. I do know that the bids came in almost $6 million higher than we were told to expect them to come in July. And that's no one's fault. That just happened. But I do have to think that as the economy in the world stabilizes and hopefully inflation stabilizes and hopefully we aren't looking at $10 gas a year from now, that these bid prices would come down. And I think it also would give us a chance to try and fully fund the project so we can do what we said we're going to do. And I just, you know, I mean, and I mean, hey, these guys are in the construction business. In the construction business, you mobilize, you build things, you leave. And completely understand why they want to move forward under the expedited schedule. But I just, would there be some pitfalls potentially in waiting? Absolutely. But I just think it's the right thing for us to do now. And I know we had that as an option a couple weeks ago, but when you're thrown, everything is thrown in front of you. And, you know, we kind of took that off the table, settled on 5 and 6. But here, we're here to decide whether we should accept the bids. And, you know, even if we say no, it happens all the time. You go back to the drawing board. Would the bids go down? Hopefully. Could the bids possibly go up? Absolutely. But to take a step back, there'd be nothing to stop us once we start finding out, and I think particularly, you know, in our efforts with the state legislature, we're going to have a good idea in a month. We're going to know in 10 weeks whether we were successful or not. There'd be nothing to stop us from going back in a month or in 2 months or whatever and rebidding the project. We can still move forward with everything if we choose to do that. As far as moving, we can still move forward with the demolition if we choose to do that. That's not a decision we have to make right now. That's,
I guess just a couple things you mentioned. The reason that we want to do construction and then pull off that project is more about your funding. Every day that we're on a project site, it costs money, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. So as far as Kraus Anderson, we still service projects we did 10 years ago. So we're not going anywhere from what you had said. And as far as saying that we are pushing for you to not delay, that's why we gave you 6 courses of action. As you had pointed out, that was one of the courses of action to do that delay. So I wouldn't say that Kraus Anderson's pushing you one way or another. We're presenting you options, and the cost impacts and the what ifs is something that is a big part of the course of action of delaying for a year, as you pointed out. And we will be here regardless. We will be here to demo the buildings if that comes in some funding that comes after that project is over. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Matt, I totally disagree with you. We promised the residents in Evelyn, Virginia, and Gilbert that we were gonna put up 3 schools and knock down all these buildings. The promise of having schools is more important than knocking those buildings down right now, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm thinking the public feels the same about it.
Well, I'm not suggesting at all that we don't build a new school. I'm not suggesting that whatsoever. I think we have the best chance of delivering, not the same, because they're in completely different environments, but delivering a comparable product in the North Star that we have in the Laurentian by backing off, by lining up our funding, and then proceeding with, and I think we would be able to get, I mean, I believe if we wait, we'd be able to get to put all of what we've taken out of this budget, not just the 2 items.
Well, you and I both know that any kind of raises people have gotten today, there's no bringing the wages down for labor. The prices of steel are high. How much are they actually going to come down? I think it's a joke to wait. I mean, let's do it and get it done. And thinking about it, that 30-some thousand or $1 million we have to put into the North Star, we're not spending every dime of it today. We're just dwindling. It's going to dwindle down for the next 2 years. We have 2 years then to come up with the rest of the funding. Our bid packages are high, but my opinion is we're crazy if we don't do this now.
I think this is one of the hardest decisions I've had to make while on the school board, because we were all gung-ho and full steam ahead when we were bringing communities together and fiercely united. And then the pandemic and inflation, and then budget shortfalls, losing kids. There just doesn't feel like there's a good, out of the 6 scenarios, there isn't one that jumps out to me and is like, yeah, that kind of solves all of our problems. But I have concerns about waiting just because you don't know. With everything going on over in the Ukraine, you know, what else is going to come out of that? How is that going to impact gas prices and everything else? I don't know. It makes me more nervous to wait and not move forward than it does to move forward at a cost. So while like I said, I'm not gung-ho about going forward on number 6. I think that's the best option under the circumstances and considering everything. I feel badly that we promised that we weren't going to leave these buildings, and the idea of a boarded up and vacant high school with plywood on the windows makes me cringe. But I also feel very strongly about moving ahead with North Star Elementary and doing the best that we can with that as well. And if we have to put off demolition to build that new school, that's a decision that I'm willing to make tonight.
Prospect of 3 boarded up high schools makes me cringe.
Well,
I tend to agree with Stacy. I think I actually agree with everything she said. It is a really hard decision because I also agree with both of what you said. So it's really conflicting. It's really hard to know. And even when you said about losing students too, I mean, I just wish the high school was vacant and the kids could just move over there for a year. That would just be so great. So that's factors into what I'm thinking too, because I understand why parents don't want their Virginia kids in Evelyn, and it's because they're thinking of emergency or a sick kid and getting to them. And I know that it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you're used to it, another 10, 15 minutes, whatever, it just seems like a long time. So I understand that. But yeah, I think I agree with Stacy, because the thing is the unknown. And with the Ukraine right now, like she said, gas prices, whatever. I mean, once prices go up, especially with steel and whatever, they rarely go back down. I mean, they really don't. We haven't really seen that, even with other building supplies where it really is open now, and prices, haven't really, they've just keep going up. So I'm hesitant to wait. I don't know, just mixed feelings.
I feel the same way. I feel like we've made promises to tear down those buildings, and we've made promises to build new schools. And so I'm conflicted as well. But the other thing too is if we put it off a year, and the demolition happens, are kids going to be in the building when any of that demolition is happening are you waiting for the summer? Because I know that was one of our discussions and concerns earlier on about whether or not kids were going to be in the building when any demolition happened on the south end or whatever the case may be.
If the high school were to be demoed in '24, the summer of '24, there would be no kids in the new North Star until the fall of '24.
Okay. And then if we did decide to put it off and say in a month, we did find out that we could, get some of the money, with the legislature or whatever way, could we go back to moving forward sooner?
The target, I think, would be that 2023 where we're looking to pull down the Malone and the annex. Ideally, if you had those dollars, could take both of those down in summer months. So yes, to answer your question, you could add that back in. Now, that price that we have would probably get renegotiated for that demolition. We can't hold the price on that contract at that point.
So again, you guys are in the building business. So what do you see happening as far as the inflation? Because that's what I was wondering myself was, the cost of things. Yeah, get the crystal ball out. Because
Better guess than we had in July.
the cost of things, just continue to be going up. And I'm concerned too about, just as others have mentioned.
Like you said, on the fuel side, pretty much anything that rides on a truck to come to the job site is subject to a price increase, right? But especially the site work, if we don't get that taken care of. And the demo is something that has a lot of trucks that have to move. That diesel fuel is going up in price pretty substantial. So either we take the locked numbers we have now or we'd be subject to those.
And then as far as moving, Noel, how much has actually happened for moving things from Virginia over to the Franklin already?
There has been, members of the board, we have moved some stuff over, but whatever you decide, I don't think you should consider how much is moved or what we've done, because we can move it back. We've moved a little bit, but teachers mostly are boxing stuff where, because Franklin, they're moving no matter what. Those teachers are moving no matter what. So it's really the Roosevelt teachers, and they've been boxing up. We've moved some, but I guess I don't know if that should be a consideration when you're making a decision. That we can go either way. You have great teachers, they understand, they will do what they need to do to make.
So do you have thoughts on this decision?
Which, you serious?
Both, yeah, both options.
Do.
Okay.
You're in a terrible situation. You're in a situation no board member ever wants to be in, because you're trying to be prophetic. Which way do you think inflation is going to go? Is it going to go up or is it going to drop? If it drops considerably, yeah, you could save $2, $3, $4 million by waiting and hoping inflation goes. If inflation goes the other way, who knew that the Ukraine was going to be invaded just a couple months ago, and you've seen what's happened as a result of that. That is probably going to continue for a period of time, and you've seen what's happened with that. If you guess wrong and inflation goes the other way and you rebid it and you've got $5 or $6 million more dollars, now you have maybe a $12 million problem. So maybe the way to think at it is, where is the least harm? Where can you put yourself in the best situation? You hold off and you guess right, you're going to save anywhere from $2 to $4 million. I don't think you're going to save $5 or $6 million. There's going to be some inflation in there. If you guess wrong and inflation goes the other way, you're going to have this problem, this 6.7 million problem, plus another multi-million dollars added onto that. So I don't want to make that answer for you, but which situation is going to put the district in the biggest problem? So in other words, you're trying to pick the least worst problem or the least worst solution, if that makes any sense.
Just a couple things to that. Number one, our construction manager is anticipating bids to go down. They presented a scenario where they said if we do wait, they guessed, and their best guess is that bids would go down by $500,000 by waiting a year. That's factoring in any additional inflation, and that wasn't done. That was done as Putin was on Ukrainian soil. So that, number one, and certainly I would hope that if we wait a little while, it won't be a problem that's exacerbated, because hopefully we will have identified additional sources of funding. I think it gives us a chance to step up our game as far as redeveloping some of these other properties. And if we can do that, I mean, it's not like we're going to sit around and wait and roll the dice and hope we get a 7. Or if you're playing craps, hope you don't get a 7.
What would it look like if we waited till, say, at the worst case end of the session, middle of May? What would that, I mean, how big of a jam would that set us back? And I know the bids would expire, we'd have to rebid. And it's not that far away, it's a couple of months. What would that do to our timeline?
It's really all about managing risk, right? And Dr. Schmidt had mentioned you don't know when you're opening yourself up to something that we don't know. Right now, we know the pain that you're going through. Why do we know that? Because before we even came to the board, we looked at 6 options. And believe me, each one of those had a lot of debate within our internal team of, well, the advantage of this and the disadvantage of that. So as we put these courses of action together, understand the frustration and the good and the bad with each. To me, from our discussions we had and the way we analyze this is the one course of action that allows you to get your new school per the design with some minor changes and finishes for sure. If you put this off and these bids expire, I can't tell you for sure that with the budget that you currently have that you can build that school. So that's a risk. Now, if you want to take that risk, it can pay off, like Dr. Schmidt said. If you don't want to take that risk, then that's why we're recommending this course of action at this time for that reason.
And we have a chance of losing our contractors that already bid low, I mean, because they could take other projects and get.
Two things. One, all those bids would expire.
Right.
And then we'd have to rebid. Whenever you rebid something that has pretty much the same scope, you have issues because now I've worked hours and hours on a bid and my competitor can see my number. So now it just becomes a little game of, well, how much more or less do I do than the low bid number? So then a lot of bidders won't bid. They'll tend to look at it, hey, I bid that once. Not all of them, but a lot of them do that. They'll say, it isn't worth my time to go back and revisit this because my number's already out there and I'm just not willing to do that. So that is a risk. So that is a risk and the inflation is a risk. And if you want to take that risk, we're with you. We're just saying that if you want to avoid that risk, that's why we are suggesting this course. It doesn't get all the buildings down. It does get you 3 buildings that you.
I'm concerned of the boilers being here on time, hooked up, heating the gym.
we would have to delay more than May because of what Pete is saying, because we would not be able to have a heating plant up and running for the existing gym, so then we shouldn't tear down the elementary.
You could use temporary heat.
We could, and that is an option. Additional cost.
Bill taught me that. Stole his thunder.
He's right. So,
But just one question. How much of additional revenue are we seeking for our project because of this? You know, because of everything's over budget. I mean, what are we as a district seeking for a potential dollar amount?
Through the legislative political process, Director
Yes,
Eddie?
yes.
6.7 million, because it's very clear to me in talking to folks, that's all you're gonna get if we go through this process, because that's your best case. COVID inflation, that makes sense to a lot of people. If you ask the lobbyists to tack on some more millions for X, Y, and Z, you're gonna weaken your case. I'm not saying you might not get it, but your odds for success are gonna go drop down. And Director Lotiger, in answer to your question here, maybe a way to think about it is that, what's the worst case scenario? Your worst case scenario, if you go forward and build North Star Elementary, here's your worst case scenario. North Star Elementary, you're gonna have 3 brand new buildings in Rock Ridge. Community's gonna love them. You're gonna have 3 older buildings standing in each community. Gilbert, Evelyn, and Virginia. That's your worst case scenario. Your worst case scenario, if you delay, is you can't build North Star Elementary, and you have 3 old buildings remaining in each community. Your worst case scenario, you can't recover from it. You can't. You can recover from this worst case scenario, but I freely admit the worst case scenario might not come out. So I don't want to be like Chicken Little, the sky is falling, but I would,
We could recover.
I know.
Worst case scenario, in any scenario, I mean, barring getting a nuclear bomb dropped on us.
Yes, Director, so you do not have the reserves to cover if inflation jumps another 5% and you rebid it next year. You do not have the reserves to cover that. I would be remiss if I didn't say that. It's your
Right
call.
now, we don't.
What you want to do, but.
And in the current international world, it's not outside of the realm of possibility that a nuclear.
It's probably a bad,
Dr. Schmidt, before you sit,
don't go there.
Come back.
yeah, one more thing. I mean, we do have the ESSER dollars that the federal government gave us. And for COVID-related expenses, I think this is obviously a COVID expense. I mean, to use the ESSER $3 to, my thought process, I want to do what we said we're going to do. I want to build those schools, and I want to, demo the properties if we can't sell them. So, I mean, what is your thought on using those dollars to finish the plan?
You can use, excellent question, and tomorrow we have community meetings on gathering input on the use of the SR funds, 11 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. If folks are watching on the camera right now, 6 o'clock in Virginia, 2 o'clock is in Evelyn, 11 o'clock is in Gilbert at the schools. So we'll get input. We'll also get input from parents and staff. We're going to send out a monkey survey here so they can give advice to you on how the SR funds should be spent. There are rules of course, with the SR funds, and these are the federal COVID dollars. One thing you cannot do is you cannot take your COVID dollars and spend them on new construction or demolition. They're not allowing schools to do that. You can do things like HVAC. There are some things you can spend on it, and you could do this. You could put all that money to retain staff and then pull money out of your general fund and put it into your building construction. You could do that. Is it going to look above board to everyone? You answer that question yourself. But it is possible, there is some money we can legitimately use those COVID dollars on. And we will do that. That was part of what was up here. But unfortunately, you can't move several billion of your Cobra dollars into this kind of a project. You'd have to use it to pay some things in your general fund, then you'd have to move general fund into the construction fund, which legally you could do that. It's going to be tough to pull that off, though.
And the only reason we have ESSER funds in this option is for the existing portion of the gym. So that's why that
Right.
dollar
So-
amount is pretty limited there.
Right, the one right here, we just could not use the ESSER funds for the new
Exactly.
portion of the building.
The existing gym, the rebranding piece, the HVAC systems and the piping, that we broke out so that you could use those illegally for that.
Right, it's, yes, and there's a little bit of a, yes, you just can't use the ESSER funds for anything you want.
And you do have additional time to pursue other funding with option 6.
All righty.
What it does do is that the risk is less because you can build the school with the dollars you have now, and it buys you time to look for other funds to demo buildings.
All righty, so any more discussion on 3.2? With none being had, we got a motion by Stacy, support by Nicole. All those in favor of moving forward with option 6, is that correct, Stacy? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The vote is 7-1. Matt voting no. 3.3, consider approval of updates to the 2021-2022 Rock Ridge Plan. Rock Ridge Code, that'd be 3.3, it was
This is way more.
6-1, yeah.
I'm way more easy.
Math.
So there's 3 changes in the plan that was sent out to all of the, there's one little thing in yellow, and that's under testing. We have a lot of tests right now, so rather than the old statement of as supplies are available, we are currently handing them out to students who want, and families who want them, when they come into the nurse's office. The other, changes, obviously the mask thing that, you guys voted on last time, is now in red. And we also, as a group, decided to recommend to eliminate masks on all of our transportation. So that's different, because the CDC came out with new, it's not a federal mandate anymore, it's left up to local control. So we're recommending that we don't do that as well. And then finally, communication, we have been sending out emails every time a student comes into contact or a student is positive. But then we decided to recommend that we do not do that anymore as well. So those are the changes.
All righty. Does everybody have enough information on the COVID plan?
When is it proposed that the amended plan becomes effective?
5:55.
I would make said motion.
We got a motion by Matt, support by Randy.
Yep.
All those, or any, we got a motion by Matt, support by Brandy. Any discussion on 3.3? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 4, adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Brandy. And I'll support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be right out, Tom.
Hour. This is the earliest we've ever gotten done.